Hello, hello. I actually thought about being like, yo, what's up, or something just to break it up and alarm people for a moment. I decided against it though. I'm too classy for that. Okay. It is currently, what time is it? It is currently 3:40 in the effing I don't know why I'm not monetizing. In the effing morning. Why am I here? I don't know. I don't know why I'm here. My body, I detest my body's ability to sleep at all. It is a consistent problem. If you have been around me for a terribly long time, you should know that I have an awful, some sort of sleep disorder of some sort that causes my body to just constantly rotate forward. And recently, I decided I'm going to wake up an hour earlier than I normally do, just to spend some extra time with a special someone. And as a result, my body flipped the fuck out. I'm just dropping that F in there. Why'd I even bother? Flips the fuck out. And decided from that point forward that I would be getting about 3 to 5 hours of sleep for the next 3 or 4 days. For seemingly no reason, because it really, really wanted to readjust itself to get me back into my maladapted, horrible sleep schedule. I kind of hate my body, and I often project will upon it that it doesn't actually have. It seems to really want me to have the worst possible sleep schedule. And come hell or high water, that's what it's going to get. So, once I finally got to the point where I'm waking up at a weird hour, I was waking up at something like 1 o'clock in the morning 2 days ago. And I thought, well, this is okay, I can work with this, because then I'll rotate a little bit forward and then it will be normal. My body instead decided, you know what, no, you're going to sleep 3 hours, then you're going to wake up, we're going to just stay awake for a really long time for no reason, and then I'm going to make you fall asleep for 12 hours, just so that I can work you all the way back around so that you're sleeping at the time of my choosing and you wake up at a stupid hour. And that's exactly what it's doing right now. That's the reason why I'm awake. I've been awake for many hours now, and I am showing no signs of stopping. Hell yeah. Love this body. I'm so glad that I do not have a standard 9 to 5. Because, boy howdy, it would not work out for me then. And I have had standard 9 to 5s, and guess what? It did not work out for me. Alright, so, what am I doing today? I am drawing Pura from Zelda in general. She was in Breath of the Wild, and she was in Age of Calamity. Although her design is pretty good in Age of Calamity, but it's different from what it is in Tears of the Kingdom. This is supposed to be the Tears of the Kingdom version, and I knew this was going to be a problem whenever I started drawing her. For background, recently I've been trying to learn how to paint in Clip Studio Paint using gradient maps. And unfortunately, I'm not going to have much time to talk about that, because the process of actually coloring gradient maps is very fast once you actually have shaded everything. So what you're going to see in this video is me drawing the picture and then grayscaling it out. And then once I have the grayscale, I'll just apply a gradient map on top of it, and the color will just sort of pop into existence and be there for I don't know how long it's going to be. But for example, I exported this also as a time-lapse to make into a YouTube short. I'll talk about that in a second. And it shows up for half a second at the very end. And this is a 60-second long video. So it's kind of absurd. But anyways, I decided I wanted to do this specifically because of that. I'm trying to learn some new technique, which I think I've decided I'm just not going to use in the future. Or if I do, I'm going to use it very sparingly. And I'm also getting to where I'm just recording time-lapse information in all of my CSP files. That way I can export those as 60-second long shorts that I can also upload to YouTube. So if you don't know, I have recently been uploading a bunch of my drawings as shorts. And so far, I think I have 4. Do I have 4? My first one was the Lanolin one, which is probably the one that you actually watched. I have one that's Lanolin, who is a IDW Sonic character. That's the one that YouTube was like, this one. We're going to traffic that one. That one has almost 500,000 views right now, which is great. I'm probably not going to get any money for any of it, which is, this kind of how things go for old Eli. But, that's great. Then I have another one about Bronwyn from Adventure Time. And then another one about Lop from Star Wars, very kind of obscure character, I suppose. And then Lieutenant Vixen, an even more potentially obscure character, from Squirrel and Hedgehog, this weird North Korean cartoon that has lasted from like the late 70s until like 2012. Like, it's crazy. Anyways, but the other 3 videos have about 40,000 views, a little bit less than that each, roundabouts. So they've been doing okay, but YouTube has not been trafficking them like it has been with the giant-chested Sonic character. Gee, I wonder why. By the way, here I'm not tracing; I'm doing corrections, and one of the ways that I'm doing corrections here is by just checking the proportional ratio of how the facial geometry is sort of orchestrated. So I'm rearranging where all the eye positions and everything happen to be. That way I can try to get the face a little bit more accurate. Because I'm not used to drawing this character, and because it's a zoomed in, bust shot, like, not bust as in like chest, but, bust as in like 1/4 of the top 1/4 of the body. I'm basically just trying to focus as much on not detail, but accuracy to facial proportions as possible, which can be really difficult if you don't have any experience drawing that specific character. And I've only drawn Pura probably twice? I know I've drawn her once. I can't remember what the drawing was, but I'm absolutely certain that I did draw her once. Whenever you're an artist, you can't remember anything that you did. Anyways. Whenever you're drawing a straightforward character shot like that, it's actually fairly difficult to get it right, because you have to get all the proportionality of the face, like the position of all the elements, like eye and everything. You have to get it perfect. So if you want to draw it slightly, like the character looking very slightly to one side, then it's probably a better decision to just go with a full shot of that character, sort of more of an ISO shot. I don't know how to describe it. Not isometric, but you know what I mean. Where they're sort of looking a little bit off to the side, where you're getting a little bit of that nose ridge, that sort of thing. When a character's just looking straight at you, then even the human eye is extremely wired to see the smallest imperfections. So it has to be perfect. You can't have one eye 1 pixel down and one eye 1 pixel up or anything like that. You absolutely will be able to see it. It is completely unacceptable. So whenever you're doing that, you have to make sure that the model is absolutely correct. There can be no errors in it whatsoever. So with this, even now, there's still errors. In the finished version, there are plenty of errors. Like most of my drawings, I get to a part of the drawing later, once I have the line work mostly done, where the drawing looks pretty damn good to me. And then whenever I start adding the color, then it really brings out where all the errors in the shading happen to be. And even the smallest imperfection, as a result of this, staring straight at them, this pose, as a result of that, even the slightest adjustment in the position of pixels in your shading can cause facial features to move up or down by very tiny increments. This visually, like the line is still there, it hasn't moved. But you probably have seen examples of this in the past, of applying a little bit of an adjustment to light, and then suddenly you can't tell where something is anymore. It sort of reminds me of those pictures of objects on the street near the equator during certain times of the year, where the sun is directly overhead and nothing has a shadow, and it looks like a badly lit video game. Like, reality stops looking like reality because there's just no shadows present. It looks absolutely insane. Google some pictures of that if you want to. So you can imagine if you're doing this and it's not real, and it's just you just thinking, well, the shadow is probably here, I guess, and you're not even using a reference. Most of the time I'm not using reference at all, other than, the drawing itself or whatever. I'm not using a real life reference, in other words. Then you can imagine how even the smallest error can dramatically alter the perception of the overall image. Now, I'm being too hard on myself, as I normally am, but that's still true regardless, irrespective. So, anyways, just getting that out in the world beforehand, getting you guys up to speed. Alright. But for now, it's fine. One of the things, like, everyone loves Pura. That's one of the things I was kind of surprised by. Whenever she first showed up in Breath of the Wild, of course, she's, like, portrayed as being a little kid. I still thought, well, she's still pretty cute. Like, no, Plague, don't do that. No, I mean, like, literally, her design is cute. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? But like, the whole frilly thing, the way that they portray the, not the Sheikah, what are they called? I guess they are the Sheikah, aren't they? But the whole, like, white hair with, like, red highlights thing, it looks really good in the Breath of the Wild style. I really like the way that they portray that tribe, I guess is the way to describe it. So that combined with, like, the overall aesthetic for her original design was pretty neat. Although it is weird to compare, like, supposedly she was reduced to the state of a child, right? Because of her experiments. But if you take her, like, child model and compare it to an actual model of a kid from, like, Kakariko Village, or what's the name of the other village? Starts with an H. It's further south. Hatinga or something like that. They look nothing like, because the children there look like humans, whereas Pura, as a child, looks like some sort of abominable creature from the depths of hell that has a head that is so large. It's like a Sonic character. If you've seen my Lanlin short, or any of my videos on Sonic characters, one of the things I often say is that the head shape of a Sonic character is so massive that you could take the entire rest of their body and fold it up and it would still fit inside of their heads. That's Pura. Like, her head is outlandishly huge because they're trying to really overemphasize the cuteness of her. She's supposed to be like a doll, in a sense. But anyways, she's still cute, even though she's like an abomination against the Lord, and so forth and so on. She's still cute in her own way. She had a bit of a minor glow up in Age of the Calamity whenever you supposedly go backwards in time. She kind of has this look of sort of like an alt girl, I guess. I'm not sure how to describe it in Age of Calamity. She looks fine. I liked her. I thought she was a pretty attractive looking design. The one that they did for Breath of the Wild, though, Tears of the Kingdom. Woo-hoo-hoo. They fucking nailed that, didn't they? So with Tears of the Kingdom, I was surprised, well, not surprised, but I was pleased to go on Twitter and see Pura trending, and it turns out every other human on the face of the planet likes her too, because she's hot as hell, because she is a really smart, would you say that she sort of has mommy energy in a way? Not like creepy mommy energy, but good mommy energy, yes. Good mommy energy. She's got a lot going on, and I like all of it. But anyways, yes. So that's the reason why I decided to draw her, because I like her. I like her. That's it. Not that complicated. So, I feel like doing sort of I've described in the past how one of the things I'd like to do is sort of intimacy pornography in a sense. Having you be. I don't, draw. Whoa, holy shit. Phone, calm down. That was a certain someone saying something. I'll just go down here. Okay. Alright. Sorry. What was I saying? I can't remember what the hell I was saying. Okay. Pura is great. So, the gradient map thing, yes. Intimacy porn, yes. I was trying to do intimacy porn. I don't do nipples or anything like that. Sometimes I get a little bit. I toe the line a little bit. Sometimes more than a little bit because I find it funny. It's fun to be teasy like that. But most of the time, I try to play it fairly clean while just being suggestive, even with the things that people most associate with me, like the Pokemon, cartoons or whatever. The joke is always going to be sort of ribbing someone in the side, and clearly the thing that's being portrayed has more going on than what is being visually seen. I make extremely suggestive things, but at the same time, I make them as wholesome as possible. That's my whole thing. Wholesomeness combined with the suggestion that there's more to it than that. Because all that sort of loops in with intimacy, but sort of safe intimacy in a sense. There's more to it than that, but this is one way of looking at it. So whenever I want to do these sort of direct one-to-one face looking directly at face sort of images, it's very important to get that sort of intimacy correct. So in drawing her, I was trying to think about what is it about her physical design that is so appealing. It's easy to just look at her, well, she's hot. She's fucking hot, Plague. I don't know why you guys sound like that. It's quite frankly embarrassing for you. You should work on that. All of us need to work on ourselves. You guys are no exception. Don't blame me. But I kind of kept coming back to her eyes. Her eyes do a lot of the work. And I think it's because she has these sort of sleepy eyes to her. She, what's a great way of putting this? She has, Betty Davis eyes. That's the thing I'm looking for. She has Betty Davis eyes. You guys, a lot of you probably have no clue who that is. Don't worry about it. There's a song called Betty Davis Eyes from the 1980s. Although I cannot remember for the life of me who actually sang it until now. Kim Carnes, that's who it is. Okay. Kim Carnes did a song called Betty Davis Eyes. And Betty Davis, would I describe her eyes as actually being attractive? Not really, exactly, no. That's the thing about it. They're very kind of droopy, in a way. And they sort of extend a little bit past her, facial palette, I guess. But there's still something about it. They have such personality. And a lot of it, of course, was her association with roles. But I think even the song describes them as those kinds of eyes as looking like a spy. Because she's not talking about Betty Davis in this case. She's saying that you have eyes, you look like a spy, you have Betty Davis eyes. But there is this sort of, subversion to someone that has that look about them. Where they don't have, overt, direct... They don't have, a direct visual appearance where you look at them and... You know how I normally draw eyes? You can look at them and be like, oh, those are supposed to be, seductive eyes. They're bedroom eyes. These kind of eyes that, Betty Davis has or Pura has, they have this sort of... A lot of it also is her, the mascara, the red mascara that goes under her eyes. It kind of gives her the sort of look like she almost has bags under her eyes, but she doesn't. So she's able to keep her eyes flat, but at the same time have that sort of droopy appearance that makes her look sleepy or sort of approachable in a sense. It's kind of hard to describe personality traits to it like this. But there is something about that where, because a woman might look like she has that sort of mark under the eyes, it makes them look more worn or weathered or less tolerant of bullshit as well. There's a lot going on with that, because the human eye is so wired to see faces and things. I forget what the thing is called. Like, you can look at a cloud or something and you can see faces super easily. Whenever I'm using the bathroom, I look at my floor and there's a pattern in the tiles, and sometimes I see little faces in it. I forget what it's called. Usually I sit there and I think about what the term is, because I I think about this type of stuff a lot, but my brain has a tendency to just lose information. Faces and things. Pareidolia, yeah, of course, pareidolia. But yeah, people have severe pareidolia, and we're able to recognize faces and things very easily because we're wired for faces. That's how we're evolved as creatures. That's just how we're programmed. We work that way. So whenever we see someone, our bodies, like our minds, are trying to register as much information as we possibly can about someone just from looking at their face. So we can tell if they're like crazy or a little bit off, a danger to us in some way, or even if they have like similar backgrounds or they might think the same things we do. And you can pick up on a lot of things just from looking at someone and just gleaming a small amount of information from their facial appearance, like health and so on, just all sorts of things, because we're just wired that way. So whenever you sit there and you think about things like this, about what those eyes mean to you, it carries a lot of significance. And of course, this is a video game character. I'm just, reading a lot into it. But that's how you should think whenever you're designing things like this. So in Pura's case, a lot of my focus was on the eyes. And I was trying to get that just right. And I didn't quite get it. I got closest whenever I was nearing the... I got closest after I got the line work done. But once I started doing the shading, I feel like it started losing a little bit, and once we finally get all the way to the final image, I think I lost some of it. But it's still mostly a success, I think. Her facial proportions were also important, because I noticed that her nose is a little bit longer, like the little... There's no... this is a big part of it. Because of the style of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, there's almost no shading that goes on with the face. They focus a lot on the shading of the undercarriage of the nose, and that's all they do. There's almost no shading of the nose ever. Which, if you're doing any sort of shading, trying to make things look a little bit more realistic, becomes a big problem. Because if you add too much shading, then it stops looking like the character. It's one of those problems with adapting things to different styles. You have to try to figure out moves that are solutions to those problems. In the case of like translating an anime character into realism, which I don't really do, I'm not a realistic... I don't have much realism in my body when it comes to my style. Whenever you're doing that, though, what you might do as a trick is, even if you're aiming for a realistic style and you want to keep that sort of anime nose where it's just basically a dot, then you can achieve that by really cranking up the levels on the image and having a lot of contrast between your lights and darks, and put a very heavy focus on almost blowing out the skin tone by having most of it be completely white, because that will basically irradiate every single bit of information from the face, that area. So you can focus mainly on the eye. Because even when in high contrast lighting, there's still enough, you can still have enough of a direction that the eyes, because the brow overextends past the eye, it will always cast a shadow in certain angles. So you can still get away with it. You just have to be very clever with how you approach it. So there are always solutions. There's always moves that you can take that can translate across styles. And I'm not saying that I'm succeeding with it, this particular picture. I'm trying. I'm always trying. Look for it whenever you see other people do things. Look for it whenever I do things. Look for it in real life. Because sometimes you can even see someone that you know in real life. Here I am trying various moves to try to get this thing just right, and I end up giving up. You can see someone that you know intimately in real life, and then you see them in a different kind of lighting, in a different light, that's where the expression comes from, and it completely alters your perspective on what they look like, because it looks nothing like them, just because they wandered under an overhead light, and now suddenly they look sinister, or they wandered under an underhead light, and now this beautiful person now looks very weird, because all their features are being cast upwards, and that's something you're not used to seeing. Lighting changes everything. That's why lighting is so important whenever you're filming anything. It's why whenever you're taking photographs, people like to wait around for the golden hour, which is just before sunset, which can make it really difficult to shoot things, even in film. Because once you reach the golden hour, it won't be long before that the sun goes all the way down, and now you have no lighting at all. Or there's so much of a bleed over from all the oranges and reds and all those hues that you get from a sunset that it completely washes out the photograph that you're trying to take with those colors. It makes it look less authentic. And the reason why we wait for golden hours is because of the angle of that light. You still have full white light that's able to fully, render the shape of something without it having its form lost. But that only happens in a space of a few minutes in some cases. It depends on where you are in the world, and it depends on the time of the year and so on. So, just lighting is a nightmare. That's my point. So if you're wondering how come you don't do this sort of grayscale thing more often, 1, it's a lot of work. 2, a lot can go wrong very, very quickly if you are not using reference image. If you're using a reference image, and even if you're translating it to a different model, like a cartoon character or something, something that's not realistic, then you can still, translate it because you're still looking at the rules of how lighting is working in a real life image. If you're doing it like I'm doing, you're just guessing, then, all sorts of things can go wrong. And then you're fucked, as the children say. So far here, Pura is still looking okay. She still has those Betty Davis eyes that I'm aiming for. But we shall see. Because you notice here that I'm doing the hair first, because I want that to be correct, because I want that to be the framing. Plus, the hair is white in this circumstance. The character's hair is white. I'm glad that they removed that red streak from her hair. I actually like it better. I didn't mind it too much in Age of Calamity, but I just think she looks better without it. But since her hair is white, I figured, well, that's going to be the highest form of contrast on the positive side of things. So I should establish what my mid-range is going to be for the scale of my shading. What my grays are going to look like, and what my grays are going to look like. What my blacks and whites are going to look like. And I tried to have a high amount of contrast, but I eventually decide that I should reduce it a little bit. So the interior, where it's closest to the face, where the least amount of light is going to come in, ends up being a little bit lighter than what I end up drawing here, I think. But that's why I started with the hair, because it's white, So that's the furthest extreme. If I had something else that was completely black, that still required shading, like the eyelashes in this case are completely black, obviously, but they don't really require shading, so I'm not going to touch them. But if she was wearing like a black t-shirt or something, I would probably also kind of start there, just to establish the level tonality. But after that, that's when I go to the skin tone. And here I'm going to shut up a little bit because I kind of want to watch it myself. Because I'm always learning. See, that's the thing about learning. You learn by making mistakes, and I make a lot of mistakes. Well, I don't see them. I see a lot of them, believe me. And the more that you make, the more you're going to learn. One of the unfortunate things with me is I've never really been good with my hands. Which you might think you're an artist. How can you be bad with your hands? You definitely can be. When it comes to like, and here's I think where I start going wrong. I start trying to like overemphasize the lighting, which kind of looks mostly fine, but it's too much for the character because I lost sight of the fact that she has that sort of anime look about her. I do end up reducing this, like you can see here. But I think I didn't get the lighting quite right. Because I focused too much on the how angular her face is, like I tried to taper it too much. Which ends up making it lose a little bit of the form of her features. I was actually telling this, I was describing, because I had like a bad couple of days where I was just not in a good state of mind. And part of that was the fact that, like, one of the things was I had done this picture and just gotten done with it, and I was not happy with it. Because I set out with, like, since I was going to do this gradient map experiment, and I was really trying to do a good job because I really like Pura, and I like her, I wanted her to notice me. I was just trying to do a good job because I knew people would probably like to see a picture of Pura. And I needed to nail it because it is this, like, really direct thing where you're looking directly into her eyes, that sort of thing. I didn't really get the result I wanted. It still looks fine, but it doesn't have that energy I like. One part of it is I found with other artists that are not me. I prefer art that has a lot of energy to it, which is why I'm like so attracted to like cartoon characters, like even something like Sonic or whatever. Like, you know, I draw Sonic characters a lot. I've found like way more than I should because I don't care about the games at all. And part of that is just because it has that sort of look to it. Some things are just like it. I'm trying to think of another product that's sort of like that. There's plenty, but does none come to mind immediately. But I really like that overall sort of look to things where things are like, take Adventure Time, for example. I did that recently as well. I don't really like Adventure Time's style because it's too simplistic. And it has like noodle arms and things of that nature. But it's in the upper level of that range, where things start getting more and more simplified. Like you're taking like an arm, for example, and instead of drawing this photorealistic arm, you reduce its sort of realism, but are still keeping how it works. And once you get to the point where it looks sort of cartoony, but you can still preserve its nature as like a real arm, that's what I like. And once you go too far in that direction, you start ending up with like Adventure Time noodle arms, where they're still arms, but you know they've lost all sense of form and reason when it comes to realism. I don't really care too much for that. Then you kind of lose me. But yeah, I really like it whenever things are able to preserve like the momentum and force and the energy behind it, which is part of the reason why I like animation. I keep up with some mangas. I really like the art in One Punch Man. And I read the webcomic, but not the webcomic for obvious reasons. Nothing against that, of course. I'm glad that he still does it. One still does it. But I really like it whenever he's able to translate like form and movement into like a swift motion. It looks great. I forget who the artist is behind One Punch Man, the adaptation manga. Akira Toriyama in the original Dragon Ball, not so much as time went on, but especially in early Dragon Ball, that's the thing that he was most known for, is being able to create dynamic looking motions. And I guess Dragon Ball in some cases is also a style like that. Because Dragon Ball doesn't really look like most conventional animes. The characters are way more chunky, and their body parts are sort of, it depends on what era that it's being drawn in. The body parts are often more segmented, because there's such an emphasis on musculature. I've found that my favorite era is the, sometimes this is inaccurate, but I refer to it as the Maida era. Is one of the key animators. You can look that up if you want to. I'm not going to go into it. But it's around the Saiyan saga up to like the Frieza saga. That's another way of putting it. Love that era. The overall way that the body structures are laid out and everything looks great. Love that stuff. But that's one of the reasons why I like character designs like this. Because it has that specific, non-realistic, but still true to form proportionality that makes things look appealing while preserving energy and without being so dedicated to realism that you can't do things with the character that would be unrealistic. If that makes any sense. I probably started with a completely different point and I started rambling and then I forgot it and then I looped back around to a completely other point of view. Oh well. But yes. Believe it or not, even though I haven't started the color yet, the video is almost done. Which I know is outlandish for me, because I feel like whenever I'm doing these things, the line work is probably about... You guys don't see it, I do different speeds. Whenever I export these files, I do all the time lapses in Bandicam, right? Then I export them. Like this drawing, for example, took me about 12 hours total. It shouldn't have, but it did. And if you take like an ordinary 12-hour drawing from me, probably the first 5 or 6 hours will be line work, and then the rest of it will just be coloring and shading and just trying to get the background and stuff working. With these things that use the gradient maps, the line work stays about the same, and then once I start doing the grayscaling, that is basically the painting. And then whenever I start trying to apply the grayscaling, that takes just a very small amount of time. So one of the reasons why I'll probably stop doing it, or I'll stop using it globally, I really don't like the grayscale method. I know most artists actually do that. They paint via grayscale first because they want to get their contrast correct. I kind of hate it. Part of that is the fact that I just am not used to doing it, I guess. That's always going to be true. That's one of the reasons why I was trying to do it. Because I know for a fact that I'm less comfortable doing it. But I wanted to learn how to do it because that's just how you grow. You just have to do things that are slightly out of your comfort zone, but you can still do to some degree. That way you learn more about it. And then once you learn more about the thing that is peripheral to the thing that you have an interest in doing all the time, that actually helps you to do the thing that you were already doing. It's sort of I remember in college describing this to my teachers, and they said, "Oh yes, that's actually an advanced learning technique, or it's something like that." I was like, "Oh, it is? I thought it was just common sense." But yeah, if you Here I'm doing the gradient scale thing. You basically take that grayscale, right-click, and then add a correction layer to it that is a gradient map, and you assign different colors to different parts of the levels. So you can like make the lightest part of it like red and the darkest part of it blue, and it'll just assign those new colors to whatever the grayscale version of it happens to be. You can also apply it to things that are already colored, but that'll obviously replace the colors, and it'll try to interpret the tone and hue of those colors as being part of the same scale as the grays anyways. So you basically just have to highlight everything that is the same color and hope that it turns out correctly. You can still adjust the mapping of the grayscale later, but it can get kind of tricky. So yeah, here I'm like trying desperately to adjust the reds, and I discovered that I didn't like that bottom range, so I had to adjust it. The main thing I don't like about it, I just really like having total control over the colors. And whenever you're doing this gradient map thing, you don't. If you're very, very good with your mapping of grays, then I'm sure it's probably great. But that's more for people that do realism. And as I just said, I don't really like realism. I like the energy of these kinds of models instead. That's what I prefer. And here I was trying a standard multiply layer just to see what would happen. If you go back and look at that, then you can see that even though I was trying to get the tone and everything right of it, it wouldn't apply correctly. I was using a multiply layer, and it was making her look chocolate and very nice. Very nice. Very nice. But it didn't really look like her actual skin tone. So the gradient map is actually really good for that, because it sort of ignores whatever the tone of the grays happen to be. It's just sampling them and going, oh, you want to replace the most medium level gray with something. We will replace that with a black if you want to. We don't care. Here in Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint town, we'll just do whatever you want to. So gradient maps are great for that. If you want to sample an area and then completely change its tone and the values and colors, and do that universally across whatever sample area that you want, then it is a great tool. I don't think that I'm going to keep doing it in the future, though, to color complete images. So here we get the whole image. I found that after going back and trying to filter it and like tone down all the excessive tonality that I applied over it in the first place, then it sort of ends up looking more like an ordinary one of my drawings. The one advantage, I think, is mainly with skin tone. I'm terrible at skin tone, and I've made that clear many, many times. I'm absolute dog poopy at it. But at least whenever I do it through grayscale, as long as I'm getting the color right, which is another problem, then it does come out a little bit better than it normally does for me. Yeah. But I think I prefer the precision of how I normally do it, which is just taking the line work, applying a basic color, and then going back over on another layer and doing whatever the dark versions of those colors happen to be. And if I require more depth to it, I'll do a second layer that's like dark 2 or something. And then I'll go over that maybe with some sort of highlighting layer or something that breaks up the whatever it's called whenever you do a sort of border color that exists between light and dark whenever you're doing your shadows. It's sort of like cell shading in a way. But anyways, yeah. There you go. That's what I've been up to. It is extremely complicated sounding, but it's really not that complicated. Give it a roll if you want, if you are interested in gradient mapping. I am also going to be taking this drawing and doing a short out of it. Although my shorts are... people really like the shorts from what I gather, because they are sort of like my art gripes in the sense that I'm showing you a picture, obviously, but I'm trying to like instruct and give information in such a way that it helps people. And I'll like moralize, or I'll try to apply some sort of general life lesson that helps people out in some way at the very end. Which is sort of like what my art gripes usually are. And that's what I have been struggling with lately, is just trying to figure out how do I reach people these days, because people don't really watch long form content like this that much. And this has been a great way of doing it, as evidenced by that silly little landline thing. I had a generally good message at the very end of it, and it may not have the depth of doing a video like this, but it does have the accessibility, and I hope that people will sort of follow those enough to where maybe I'll bring in a few more people, and they can watch these videos and maybe get a little bit more of a taste of good old genuine Eli content. Who knows? Yeah, look for that short whenever it comes out. It'll be the exact same drawing, just way faster, way faster. Now it is about 4:30 in the morning. I'm still not tired at all. So I'm going to end this, and then I'll just bumble around in the dark for a while. Maybe I'll wander out into the night and fight the animals, like always. All right, anyways. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Shorts are not going to replace the art gripes. I'm going to keep doing them. Don't worry. Don't panic. All right, I will see you guys later. Goodbye, everyone. Bye-bye.